Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Attendance Bias. I am your host, Brian Weinstein, although this week I am one of three co-hosts. Today is a recap of last week's Madison Square Garden shows from April 20th to 23rd, and I don't feel quite comfortable enough to just ramble on about 4 Phish shows in a row without someone to bounce some ideas off, so luckily I was able to get our occasional co-hosts and hosts of their own podcasts called Stub Me Down, JW and Skinny. And if you haven't heard Stub Me Down, definitely check it out. It's somewhat similar to Attendance Bias, but with a little bit of a different flavor. 2 hosts instead of just me and a guest, and they really cover a lot of different bands and different types of music and go more into different tangents than what I'm used to in my more structured setup. Now, a minute about that structure. This episode was kind of rushed into production. After MSG was over, all 3 of us had a lot in our heads. We just wanted to get it out as quickly as possible, and we wanted to just bounce ideas off as much as we could, let the conversation take us where it would. So that's kind of the nature of today's episode. It is a straight recap, no segments, no lightning round, no context, nothing at all, just a freewheeling conversation between 3 fans who love nothing more than to talk about Phish. So enough from me. Enjoy the Madison Square Garden April 2022 recap with Brian and Skinny and JW from the Stub Me Down podcast. How are you guys doing?
Man, we're doing awesome. I mean, I'm a little tired. I'll talk about why my calves are still sore. But I mean, I must have walked 1,000 miles if it was 10 in New York City. It was a great week. I'm still recovering physically because I'm old, but I'm doing good.
Yeah, I was at 3 of the 4 and did a fair amount of walking, and I am surprised and shocked and also thrilled that I made it back from New York City without catching COVID again, like I did when we were talking about Atlantic City. So I guess the 3 of us were some of the few that did not come down with COVID after the garden run. I had a little bit of a midweek scare, but I had been cutting my lawn, and I think I just got a real dose of allergies. And I tested
grass.
Yeah, I did. And you know what? And look, let's not forget, guys, before there was COVID, there was Wook flu, man. So you do a couple of nights, 3 nights of hard living, hard partying with 20,000 of your closest Phish head friends. And there was that, kind of that icky, sick feeling that you got. So, I'm glad that we made it through, as I'm glad that you guys did as well. But I mean, what an unbelievable couple of nights up there, 4 nights for you guys, but just musically and doing this thing in April, Brian. I don't know, man. What do you think?
I want to do it again and again and again and again and again. I loved it so much. I am a New York City native now. I live literally a 15-minute train ride straight shot into Penn Station. So I leave sometimes at the very last minute during the holiday run when it's extra cold, just so I could go up a couple set of escalators, and I'm at my seat at Madison Square Garden. So this couldn't have been more convenient, but I loved it being in the spring because I have more of an excuse to not just hustle it in to the garden. I like that I could meet up with some friends and go to a restaurant outdoors. And, it feels good, at least while we're doing it, to walk around, Skinny, if not afterward. Right. It feels good to walk around the city and see people outside. I saw a good friend of my podcast and a good friend of the Phish community at large, Scott Marks, who works for Phish.net and the Mockingbird Foundation, just walking down the street.
I saw him in the lobby of my hotel the first day we were the first day that we were there. And I went up and said, hey to Scott. It was really cool to see him. I was like, oh, well,
I didn't see him.
Right there.
I didn't see him.
I did.
Or excuse me, he didn't see me.
Yeah. But to me, it felt a little bit like the Baker's Dozen, like a little bit of a taste of what it's like to be in Manhattan in the summer. Now, I don't know if I want to give up and make it more difficult for me to get to New York City, or to get to New Year's Eve, because that's something that, is priceless to be able to get to the special vibe of a New Year's Eve show. But just the same, I might be willing to trade it for 4 nights. I will say, though, I was very lucky in that I can't say I was happy that it was canceled and rescheduled, because I remember the feeling in late December when the Omicron variant was really starting to get ahead of steam. And I was a bit concerned about catching it, because at that point I was COVID free up to that point. I did catch it in January when it just felt like it was everywhere and there was no escaping it here in New York. But when they canceled it, I was a bit relieved, just for that. Like, I didn't have to kind of choose between COVID and Fish, because that felt kind of stressful in its way. And then when they rescheduled it and released those dates, I looked at my school work calendar, and wow, it was right over my spring break. And
I know. And it's funny. I wish they would have played like Ave Maria over the 4 days, because I'm a Catholic school teacher. So I was like, oh, great. And I remember Josh was saying, this is ridiculous. This another variant, like, there's nothing you can control. But I remember saying to him, like, wow, it's completely out of your hands, man. You know what I mean? And I was a little bit concerned to New Year's as well, but I was ready to wear the mask and risk it. And I had just gotten my booster in October. And as a matter of fact, I just got a booster 2 weeks prior to going up to the Garden. So I was like, if any time to take a chance to see an indoor concert for me, I felt like, okay, well, this is the time. And scot-free plus great music. I mean, I got lucky, I guess, because I know a lot of people didn't. And if you're out there, I'm sorry. Because I guess it's inevitable at this point.
Well, did you guys plan to go to all these shows in December and just kind of rolled over these tickets?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
We were a little bit worried because my daughter's birthday is on the 22nd. And so when we saw the initially rescheduled dates, we were like, well, we can go up for a couple of days, but we can't do more than that because we got to get back for her birthday. And so I was pissed when they canceled December, because we had the time off at that time with Christmas break. We had the kids covered. We had another thing that we had scheduled in New York over that time period that Megan was getting a tattoo, and there was a non-refundable deposit. So we still ended up going up to New York for a night on the 30th. And, when we wore masks and we did all that stuff, we had been in Vegas for the Halloween run, and same thing, we wore masks inside and followed all that stuff. The thing that I find funny about them moving the shows from December to April because of COVID is that everybody fucking still got COVID anyway. And honestly, I think that the attitude at least in December was people probably would have been more masked up and more COVID safe at that particular time, because there was maybe a little bit of a spike, or a big spike, I guess, with Omicron. But now, 4 months later, everybody was like, this shit's over, man. I'm going to party. And there were not a lot of people. I mean, handfuls of people that were, truly masking in the venue. I was not masking. I was on the floor 2 of these nights, and it was a friggin' mob scene. And people, it was honestly 2019 indoor shows all over again, like nothing had ever happened. And, so, and plus the fact that, back in December, they were still playing Knicks games and Rangers games and all that shit at Madison Square Garden. And granted, a Fish show was a little bit different, but they were still holding large public events, in this building. And, so I was definitely annoyed by it. Obviously I got over it. We ended up, being able to get up there for the 3 that we went to. And, I loved it in April. I loved the weather. It was much nicer walking around New York City in, jeans and a t-shirt, as opposed to my heavy winter coat.
I wear shorts every day. I mean, I was wearing shorts. I didn't care.
Yeah. I mean, the weather was great. And, so I just look at that COVID shift really turned into I think they were, I don't even know. Like, what is the band sitting there saying now? Like, oh man, all these people got COVID and we moved it so they wouldn't. And, I think we're at that stage where, look, we're all going to get it. If you haven't gotten it, you might get it again. I mean, you have to try and take care of yourself the best you can,
I know you guys are closer to the Maryland, Baltimore area, the Mid-Atlantic. I'm in New York City. I think that's kind of the prevailing attitude at this point. People are definitely more cautious here. Like, I see a lot of masks just generally day to day. But I think the vibe here is just kind of like, wear one if you want to wear one. No one's going to really judge you, at least in public and out loud. But most people are generally not. And it's just kind of, if you get it, you get it. Take care of yourself and those around you and move on after the fact. And that's kind of the attitude that I had going into these shows. I wore a mask on the train because that's the rule on the MTA on the Long Island Railroad. I took into the city. I don't want to cause trouble. I don't want to be the outlier or the asshole. And I wore a mask all of last year at work and half the year this year at work. I'm kind of used to it. If it's the law of the land, it's what I'll do. If it's not, I'm happy not to.
Yeah, me too. And my daughters wear it to school like still, and they don't have to. They're just like being precautious. And it's funny that a 12 and a 7-year-old are my models because I wore a mask, of course I had to, because I'm a teacher as well. And wearing that all the time in the classroom, even outside at one point at my school, you couldn't even take it off or, not don it until you were in your car when you left. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a very confusing situation. I kept saying that, before we get into the shows. Exactly. The situation was super confusing. I'll tell you what adds to that confusion is like Midtown is a complete construction site and it is like a maze going in there. Which they played over the 4-night run. And I see what they're trying to do. I guess turn it into some niche area is what we heard from somebody that, runs a bar around Midtown and the Moynihan train hall. I think that was night 3, J-Dob, when we went over there. And he was saying how, they're trying to get people and everything. And I was like, well, what's up with all the construction? That's not helping you. And it's like, they're trying to turn it into Midtown proper. I had no idea that all that was going on. That was a strange sight. And the last thing I'll say, I guess, about masks is this. Listen, you're a human being. You choose to do what you want to do. And there were plenty of people in there. My seatmate and his wife for all 4 nights was wearing a mask. And it was nothing, it's not like, hey, what are you doing? And he wasn't like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, what's that guy over there doing? So it was all good, man. I was happy to be there, but I don't know if I was careless. I mean, I'm double boosted. I don't know what to do at this point.
I will say one last word before we get into night one, unless J-Dubs, you have something to add. But I will say on that note, the Moynihan train hall, it's so nice. I grew up coming into Penn Station all the time. My dad would take me to Knicks and Rangers games, or my family would go to the Ringling Brothers. Every time I went to Manhattan, that was the only way to go, through Penn. And it's always been, at least in my lifetime, such a shitty building designed for oversized rats to make their way to the exit or another train. It's so demoralizing and dispiriting. When I went to the 8th Avenue portion, which is the Moynihan train hall, but used to be that portion of the post office, it looks like a real train station.
Yeah, it does. It's amazing. I love it in there, man. The bar in there was really, really nice. Really nice place.
So whoever was in charge of that, or whatever committees were in charge of that, and you listen to a bunch of fish podcasts, kudos to you. Thank you for not making me feel like a rodent of unusual size coming in just to Madison Square Garden. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's funny.
All right, Skinny, take us away for night one, man.
All right. Well, so night one, I know anybody out there listening, there were plenty of complaints about night one, but I didn't have a lot of complaints. Well, number one, let's just talk about being there in the moment. We took the train up from Baltimore. We're there. We get settled into our hotel room. We met Josh and his wife, Megan, and my wife and I were hanging out. We went to a bar before and we're so excited to be there. So, when the lights go down, which we've been talking about lately too on our show, it's just this feeling of like, lights. You know, when they drop and the whole crowd cheers, I don't know what gets better than that. There's not a lot of feelings. I'm sure that people are going to argue with me about what feelings are better than that, but it's one of the best. And I didn't understand, for me, what the whole issue was about this show. I mean, the first pairing of the Carini Possum is something that I don't think I've heard open a show. And my favorite, the Mama Dance was great, but my favorite probably of the whole night was The Strange Design. You know, and I think about the line from that, you know, swimming in this strange design, which obviously foreshadows 2 nights later. And the design that they had for us there which was incredible, and we'll talk about. But I really just thought that the show was really good. Now, like at the end, I had never heard the howling. Thought that was fantastic. I thought that the Reba was really good, but you know, they had missed some spots in there, but it was a good Reba in the fact that my daughter likes that song right now. And she loves the bag it, tag it kind of philosophy, how it jumps from one kind of theme musically to another. And yeah, she doesn't hear those missed spots. I'm the only one that hears that, but I don't go, did you hear that one? They missed that note, or he came in too late there. We don't talk about it like that. So to hear a Reba the first night and think about her, it was just great. There were some really great jams in there. I mean, and let's not forget, I hear a Down with Disease every show that I go to. So I'm surprised they didn't play it all 4 nights. But the Disease was amazing.
It's a great version. I think honestly, and Brian, you can support or reject this thought, but I feel like the reason that this show is diminished is there was a little bit of sloppiness in the Disease. The Leaves was not as tight as some versions that they've played in the past. And then in the second set, I think after the twist, they play The Mountains in a Mist, or after the twist, they play The Mountains in the Mist, and then Reba, and then they close the show with Drift While You're Sleeping. And so people don't like the Church of Trey stuff. And so anytime one of those songs gets dropped into a noted position, a set closer or a set opener or an encore, for a lot of people, I think it instantly brings the show down. The thing that I love about this particular show is the Disease into the Howling. And when they did Sci-Fi Soldier in October, everybody fucking hated it. Everybody thought that it was unoriginal and too repetitive, and that the music wasn't creative and that it wasn't good. And now you get the Howling here. I think they had played it in Mexico, and then the last night they throw in another Sci-Fi Soldier tune, and now everybody's like, oh yeah, Sci-Fi Soldier, and it's just, I marvel sometimes at how quickly people change their tune about a tune after an initial appearance of it,
I think I could subscribe to that with Fish's original debuts on Halloween, between Wingsuit that became Fuego, Casvot Vaxxed, and Sci-Fi Soldier. I think
and Chilling Thrilling.
And Halloween, the Halloween one, the haunted house one.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. The other. I think that I've learned my lesson where I listen to this show or the set that they play all the original stuff once or twice. And then I just kind of let it filter through down to me, whichever ones stay in the rotation, because it's too much. The reaction is too visceral when you hear it all at once. And so you might end up saying, fucking Sing Monica, what a shitty song. But if they played Sing Monica every once in a while, I bet people would love it. Yeah, it would have its fans. And so I listened to Sci-Fi Soldier once or twice, didn't love it, didn't hate it. I felt fairly ambivalent toward it. And now I know as it comes up, I'm going to love The Howling and I'm going to love Egg in a Hole when they find their places and whatever other ones. And it's not really worth my brain space to really develop such critical opinions of the other ones that may just kind of fall into the wayside.
Right. I like how you described it as a visceral reaction, because that is so true to form when people hear something out of the gate with this band. And it can, we talked about this with Fammer a little bit. People have, very strong opinions, and they'll die on those hills, until they won't.
Right. Or they'll just abandon them.
Right.
Or they don't remember Custer, but either way.
Yeah. I mean, this is go off on too big a tangent, but that wingsuit set really revealed some Fish fans for who they were when it came to immediate opinions. It really did. But as far as that first show goes, so I was there with a friend of mine who I hadn't seen since 2018. And I originally only had tickets to the middle nights, the 30th and the 31st as they were. And so I don't know, I thought it was too much. I almost never go to a show on the 1st. I usually skip the 28th. So this year I thought I would take it a little easy. Plus, as I said earlier, my concern about Omicron, I wanted to play it as it came. And then my friend Adam messaged me, "Hey, I'm coming the first night on 420. Do you have tickets?" "No, I don't." "Oh, well, if you find them, here's where we're sitting." And then I go to a bar where there's a lot of heads, and I know, there's a lot of regulars, including me. And they say, "Oh, you got to go 420, right? That's totally your brand." I don't know what they're saying, but sure. And so I just kind of got pulled into it once I realized that I didn't have work at all. Why not? So I found a ticket a couple rows back from my friend. We hung out at Stout, Old Reliable, that bar right on, I think it's 33rd Street. And
we were there.
We were there.
Yeah. So, and then a friend of mine at work who I've known for 10 years, she told me coming up on the last day of school before break, "Hey, guess what I'm doing this 420. And when I hear it that way, it's not a mystery. So I knew people going, I had nothing to lose. It's, and I ended up going to all four. So I was excited coming into night one. I was able to go to Mexico, which was really great. So I had these kind of high expectations, but this is a completely different ball game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
Mexico is like a dream, and this is like a 4-night run at a city.
Yeah, it's almost like work. I mean, listen, dude, by day 4, I was like glad to lay in my bed until the show and watch Office Space. So yeah, Mexico and Madison Square Garden are 2 different tables, and they're set differently too. You know what I mean? And I've never been to Mexico. Josh has, but I know just from seeing the webcasts or YouTube videos of it, it's a completely different vibe. But I love this show. I mean, I'm not fluffing. I mean, yeah, there's some stuff I don't really like. I'm not really a big fan of Mountains in the Mist. I always leave the encore, so I didn't hear it.
I mean, and that's too bad because you get a gumbo slave here. I mean, this is a solid encore here. But if you look at this as a show on paper, there's really nothing to not like about it. I mean, unless it's just simple song selection. Skinny, like you said, you don't like Mountains in the Mist. Cool. No problem. Some people don't like Strange Design, even though it was a little bit of a bust out here. They hadn't played it in 50 shows. And then of course you get the kind of the kitschiness of them doing Stash and Blaze On. It's 420.
And
you know,
Sigma Oasis too was
Sigma
kind of a little kitsch, you know.
Well, and Leaves and Twist, and there's a couple of other things you can pull out there.
I know. Well, Sigma Oasis is more. They were like, take off your mask and everybody's going to get COVID by Sunday.
I did my highlight, if I had to pin one, would be the Moment Dance. I think I liked, and I, by the way, hearing myself say that out loud is pretty bananas. I could usually.
You're one of those guys that liked Black Eyed Katie but hates Moment Dance.
I don't hate the Moment Dance. It's just like it's reached the point where if they never played it again, I wouldn't miss it, and if they played it again, it's good enough to hear because they never really do something different with it until now. And I know this isn't the first time, of course, but this is the first time I was in attendance for it, and now I have bias toward it. But I think I like the jam from Carini better because when you open a 4-night run with, first of all, a fan favorite that rocks everyone's faces off, and a 20-minute opener at that, approximately, I like that jam a lot, and I'm all about the jams and rarities and bust outs, so I like that a lot. But the fact, and the Moment Dance had a really good jam as well. It wasn't as intense as Carini, but what I think I liked about it was the charm that it came out of an unexpected place. So if I had to pin a favorite, musically, I like the Carini better, but I also like the unexpectedness of the jam out of the Moment Dance.
Yeah, MoMA, I think, has had a very strong resurgence in probably the last, maybe post-COVID, if you want to call it 4.0. I think MoMA has really, we saw a great version in Atlantic City. This version here, I think at Dick's we saw a really good one. Skin, I think MoMA has been gotten a little bit more juiced. And yes, Brian, just like you said, it is pretty much the same almost every time, but they can do, once they get into the jam towards the end, the last 4 or 5 minutes of it, they can have some fun. They can make it a little bit funky. And I feel like this version plays right into that. And then it went into Leaves there, which, like I said, I really like Leaves. This version, it's not the best, but I really do like it as a song. So I like that pairing there. Like Skinny kind of let off. I have no problems with this show at all. Plus, I will also say this was the only one that my wife was able to attend. We had a situation at home that one of us had to bail for, and she fell on her sword and went. And so I enjoyed this just because, we got to be together for this one, and the other shows were great, no doubt. But not having my roll dog there was I still had Skinny, I still had Amy.
Yeah, we didn't sleep together, and it was I felt bad because that night at the end, like after the show, they were like, we're gonna go home, and I just shock. It was shock and awe.
Yeah, I mean, we left the show that night. We had a couple of late night beers at Mustang Harry's, and we were both resigned at that point that was it. We saw one, we were going to sell the rest of the tickets and go home. And the next day we decided trying to sell, we were kind of under the gun as far as getting back home time wise. And Megan was like, look, it'll be a lot easier to get rid of one ticket than two. We didn't want to saddle Christian and Amy with having to like deal with it. And,
because I'm terrible at doing that shit.
Are you?
Yeah, dude. I mean, other than being like, hey, you want to go, and like giving it to somebody on like cash transactions. I failed math twice in high school.
Well, the other thing is the other thing is that they were paper tickets. And so we had to physically meet people. But these were also the last tickets that my mom's cousin Jane had gotten for us. She passed away in January. And I've talked about her briefly before, but she had a connection to the band. And in 2010, my mom and her reconnected. And she basically said, anytime Josh needs tickets, please let me know. And I never took advantage. We only got tickets for shows that we couldn't get tickets through other means or, something special. And, like Megan's 100th, I got tickets from her for those. But these were the last shows that she had gotten. So there was kind of that. I didn't want them to just go to some rando dude on the street who didn't kind of understand the significance of them. And Megan saw that too. And so I ended up having a buddy of mine come in and take two of the seats, and we had an extra one for night 2. But so it was a little going into the next day, which don't tell my wife, but it turned out to be my favorite show of the 4.
I'm going to send a link to this podcast and she's going to know.
She's going to know. She's going to know. But that night was, I don't even really know what to say about this show. This for me is like almost a perfect Fish show. And I'll talk about almost a little bit later, but they start with the Susie Greenberg, who was in the crowd, her first Fish show. So I thought that was cool. They dedicated it to her. But for me, as soon as they started that Wolfman's Brother at the end of the first set, Wolfman's Esther Ghost, and then the second set, Chalk Dust Tweezer 2001 Maze, that segment of music right there, I'll put that up against any Fish era as far as intricacy, creativity, fun, a little bit of fishiness. I was blown away with that musical segment. And even to this day, that I can't stop going back, especially the Ghost, the Chalk Dust, the Tweezer, and the 2001 is just beautiful. It's beautiful. That Tweezer it's another MSG Tweezer in my opinion.
Do you consider this to be a 12:30 show?
Absolutely 100%. 12:30 hits every time. And I think that's why this show was such a banger.
I said 421, 12:30. What's the difference? To me, I've seen, now I've seen a ton of 12:30. Well, not a ton, but you know what I mean? Metaphorically, a bunch of 12:30 shows, and this was no different, Brian. There no difference.
I agree. This show turned out to be quite special. I do believe it was the best of the four for a number of reasons. Musically, certainly superior to the other three, in my opinion. I felt really good walking into this show. I'll just say it because this is going to be a recurring motif. I had a single ticket to all 4 nights. So I didn't have a show buddy. My girlfriend wasn't coming to these 4. She tends to like outdoor shows more so than indoor shows. This is before COVID also. She just kind of developed that preference. So, and I don't judge. I have no problem with that, of course.
As long as she lets you go, there's no problem.
Well, it's more that through my years of seeing the band, I've developed like such an extensive network of people who love going to shows, whether it's they're on their own or they have a group of friends that I could just kind of latch onto for the night. For this show, I was so lucky that a listener of Attendance Bias, shout out to Caleb, reached out to me back in December when I asked if anyone has an extra, just let me know. And he did. And not only did he have an extra, but it was in section 3, which is those raised bleachers at the back of the floor, which I'm not a floor guy. I need to sit when I need to sometimes. So to have that view of the show, of the lights, of the stage, the sound of being straight back. It's right behind the light booth. Yeah. But the option to sit when needed, I didn't really need this show, but to have that option was brilliant. Caleb was so nice. He was sitting to my left. And then to my right was a father taking his high school age daughter to her first show.
Oh,
and that's always very touching.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. That's going to be me soon.
That's awesome. Yeah. So like to join in and like purposely overhear those conversations, not to be creepy, but it's, but it's fun. When she said, you really don't know what they're going to play. And you forget how fundamental this can be, like how much we take for granted about how different they are from a lot of mainstream acts. So to hear her say, like, ask questions like that, and it's just so fun to be a part of that, even though it's just me joining in on her and her dad's experience. So that alone made it special, just to have that view and that area. And then on top of it, I don't know, I was listening to this show again. This is the sort of show that the last time I felt this was during jam night of the Baker's Dozen, where there's no good time to get up and go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
You don't want to miss anything. I had to wait until Maze to take a piss.
Yeah. Oh my God. I did that too during Maze, and I ran into RJ from Osiris.
Oh, that's fun.
I said, my bladder doesn't know that it's Maze. And then I pissed real quick and then ran back out.
You know what? I had one beer in all of inside the venue, I will say. I had one beer all of the 21st, and I didn't miss a single note of music.
That's
and I look, stellar. And here's the thing. And as we get through the rest of these nights, here's the thing for me, for these 4 shows, the song selection was totally on point. There was not one song that I thought maybe was out of place or could have been put somewhere else or was not a song. I mean, they didn't play any horn. They did, and they worked a 0 into here, but there was a tweezer in the middle of it, so I could put up with it for that. Other than that, like every song they played fit my, and like I said, I don't not like very much, but the song selection and the way they played it and the energy with which they played all of these shows was top notch. This one definitely, I think, especially with that tweezer 2001 in there and the Chalk Dust too, dude. Like Skinny, I know you heard the Rider ish is in that Chalk Dust.
Well, and, listen,
and then the tweezers, the Your Pet tweezer, like they were, and then that gets threaded through the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, well, the other thing too, I have to tell you, I went to St. Patrick's Cathedral, and walked all around there, and I sung there for 2 years, 2 summers in a row. Believe it or not, I went to like choir camp in Princeton. And I know that sounds strange, but for them to play like a traditional Jewish prayer song, and then for that type of show to come out of that, even though it was already good, into the second set, my prayers were answered a little bit. I mean, I made a little donation. I prayed for schools because I don't know if you guys are familiar with Elizabeth Seton. So she's a saint. So I prayed for schools, but apparently praying for schools prays for good shows. So I thought that also the second set made me laugh so much because, Josh, you don't like Character Zero at all. And the fact that they sandwiched a tweezer in the middle of it, to me, made it the best Character Zero of all time.
Your prayers were answered.
Well,
Yes.
I'll tell you what. Here's
Strengthening friendships.
Here is a 100% true story. They are winding down the hood and they're playing the last notes of Harry Hood. And I leaned over to my buddy Steve, who had sat down to catch a breather. And I said, dude, this spot is ripe for a Character Zero. And I swear to God, 10 seconds later, and he just looked at me and he was like, what the fuck? And I just sat there and I laughed. And then when they threw that tweezer in, I was like, all right, I can dance a little bit to this. And I just feel like the way that tweezer in the middle of the Character Zero matched the tweezer that they had played at the beginning of the set. I mean, it really connected the whole set together. And, you know, I'll take a 0 if they're going to put a tweezer in it. And
I'll take anything with a tweezer in it. Ice
Yeah,
cream
seriously.
sandwich, Reuben on rye with a tweezer, whatever.
Maybe Skinny, this is how I'll, figure out how to get tweezer on the Brussels sprouts, and maybe I'll fucking.
I'm gonna take you to church, you atheist, and then maybe.
I was at church today, actually, bro. We'll talk about that later.
I thought that with this show, I think the reason what it really hit me about why it was the best is, aside from just the quality of the jams, it really had everything that draws me into Fish. I even made a list because I'm a freak with notes. So it's got Fish mythology because it starts with Susie Greenberg, right? A real life person who we've been hearing about one-sided for 30 years. And so it was fun to like just start off with that this real life person for this song who is portrayed as a psycho, right? From an angry breakup song by the Dude of Life. Obviously she is not, but it's fun to it's great that she's in on the joke. Yeah, I thought that was very cute. I really enjoyed that. So it's got Fish mythology just to kick the whole thing off. An unrelenting set list. It's got bust outs and rarities like Avenu Malkenu, the man who stepped into yesterday. Esther, which Caleb, my new buddy, was thrilled about. One of his Twitter name, I think, is it's a lyric from Esther. It's escaping me now. They played the Mango song.
Yeah, and I mean, sorry to cut you off, Brian, but if you look at some of those statistics on Esther, so this one was a 25 show gap, but then before that it was 112 shows, 76 shows, 75 shows, 81 shows. So talk about, that rarity where a lot of people, especially like the 3040 kids, have not gotten a whole lot in the way of Esther. Mango's not quite the same separation, but this was a 24 show gap, and then you're talking 45, 43, 32, so I is
that version of Mango song. I love the Mango song. I thought it was really good.
And I mean, what a position there between About to Run and really nice Harry Hood. I thought that was a very fun placement for that Mangoes.
And those gaps you were just bringing up, it feels a hell of a lot longer when they barely play for a full year.
Right. Yeah.
It's not just shows, it's also calendar months.
Right. Yeah.
And
by the way, go ahead.
I was going to say I'm sorry, Brian, your own show history. Like, I haven't seen Esther, I don't think, since Baker's Dozen. So here we are 5 years later. I'm like, man, I haven't seen that song in 5 years. It's not like I saw 500 shows. I saw a bunch of shows in between those times, even with COVID. And I haven't seen Esther since the Baker's Dozen. They played it on Jerry Garcia's birthday, that August 1st show. Crazy.
And do you realize we're breaking down this awesome show? None of us have brought up the Ghost.
Yeah,
Closed the first set and just blew everyone away. It's I had a thought in real time.
That's why it won the
weekend Wook, But I usually don't think like this, but during the Ghost, Trey does this. I don't know if it's a chorus. I don't know. I have no guitar vocabulary ever, but he does a lick that kind of raises the energy piece by piece. It reminded me of Twist that they played on New Year's Eve 2015 that was soaring and beautiful. And it was like a time travel callback, and it had the same exact reaction. I was there, also in Madison Square Garden. And at set break, I was getting texts from friends who all hang out online and kind of do they're in a Slack channel and watch live streams when the opportunity arises. And I was getting texts from all of them saying how, like, do you believe this Ghost, unbelievable. Like, before the second set, before Tweezer, before that Character Zero ice cream sandwich, all that, this was probably the jam of the run so far.
Can I tell you?
We haven't even mentioned it.
I know. And let me tell you a story about that Ghost. This is how hot that Ghost was. The guy down the aisle from me in my row in section 119, wearing a cowboy hat with a blue unicorn sticking out of it, like a vest with no shirt and tighty whitey shorts. And I believe he was wearing silk stockings all weekend. He was also in our hotel. We caught him.
I want him on my podcast.
Oh my God. I don't know, but he during that Ghost, this is how it was so good. This guy had to run out to the aisle and just like go ape. I mean, everybody around us was going crazy because we're backed up against the luxury boxes, and people in the really, really getting into it too. As you know, just as much as we were in 119, this guy came out and was like, had sparkles and glitter flying off of him. It was crazy. It was like he was going 100 miles an hour in a Corvette while that was playing. It was really, really good. I can understand why folks voted for Ghost. I voted
and that's why I'm saying if you start with the Wolfmans and you go from, and the beginning of the show was great. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, the Wolfmans was good.
If you go from the Wolfmans into Esther, now Trey did fuck up a little bit of the Esther, the composed part after the doll drowns after the doll drowns Esther in the lake. But after that, they get it together, they finish the jam, and then that Ghost follows, but then they kept that energy up. That's a great Chalk Dust Torture. And then, I mean, I think that they were just firing on all cylinders, and then it just felt like heavy hitter after heavy hitter after heavy hitter, with the mango kind of bust out, not really, an infrequently played tune dropped in there. It just felt super, super powerful from where the band was. And I think that this show really built on the night before. And it was all a progression in my opinion. And I wasn't there the last night, but I feel like each show they told a story throughout these 4 nights. And I mean, it was just fucking so much fun.
Well, speaking of the next night, New Year's Eve, right? For all intents and purposes. So I had a very fortunate experience. I was by myself. I didn't have the greatest ticket. And so I went in early. I hung out with my friend Andy and his wife, and we decided to go to Chelsea Market to get pre-show oysters. And generally, my rule is no seafood before a show, let alone oyster, let alone raw bar, right? But it felt like summer. It was like a small taste of summer, and I love having oysters during summer. It's like a nice happy hour. So I had oysters and a lobster roll. So I was already in a good mood. You know, walking down 8th Avenue, getting toward Chelsea, which is such a beautiful neighborhood in Manhattan, and meeting up with friends. So as I was getting there, I got a text from another friend of mine who said, "Hey, where are you sitting tonight?" I sent him my seat location. "Are you solo?" "Yes, I am." "Would you maybe want to watch the show from a suite?" And I said, "Yes, I would."
Yeah, it's never happened to me before.
Yeah, and an emoji smiley face, right. Of course so. So he goes, "All right, stay in touch. I'll let you know." So while I'm eating these oysters and enjoying them, I am just checking my phone every 4 seconds. I know I'm going to get a notification if I get a text, but I'm not leaving anything to chance. And so he did. And I'm not going to explain the background. It's a little convoluted, but he was able to get a suite, which was almost straight back from the stage, catered with food for him and about 10 of his friends.
Nice
And
job.
It's not bad. Yeah.
It's not bad. And a private bathroom, which is what it's worth.
Oh, shit.
That's
God
really
damn.
what it's for. Like,
So
take away
bring
all
on the seafood.
Yeah. I'll have another order of oysters.
Right. How are the Chincoteagues? Are they
extra horseradish?
Yeah. And so he didn't give me this order, but he said, "I'm just asking people to miracle their tickets if they have one."
Wow, that's
because
a great
this is
order.
Because this is all free. The suite is. And so I was able to get in touch with my friend Alyssa, who's been on my podcast. And because I knew she was looking for a ticket, I miracled her my ticket. And I found out later that it was so she and her father could go to the show together.
Oh, wow.
She didn't
That's
tell me
awesome.
that ahead of time. Like, she just was looking for an extra, is the way she phrased it. So that was very touching. And so, around Passover, I did a mitzvah. So I was very happy about that.
Well, wait a minute. You have to explain to the Gentiles what is a mitzvah.
Oh, a mitzvah is just like a good deed. It's like when you do something selfless and you don't think about the reason for it. You're just saying something nice to someone or, donating something. It's a mitzvah, mitzvah it's just a good deed.
Oh, I'm going to put that into my vocabulary. I know like ganef, but that's like,
I don't know what's a ganef?
A ganef is a thief, I thought. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I'll have to check.
I think
Yiddish
that's
is the
the
best
opposite.
language, by the way. Yiddish has a word for everything, and it all sounds so ridiculous. I love it.
Right. It's so funny. But
I was walking into this show so jazzed that I was going up the special escalator to the left or to the right. I looked down at all the peons going through the metal detector. You schmucks. There's another Yiddish word. So, but the security search was nothing. They pretty much looked at me and then let me through. I got to go to this beautiful suite that had Mighty Quinn's barbecue in it. Oh my God.
Mighty Quinn is the name of the barbecue place?
Yeah, it's delicious.
Oh, come on within. All right. Like, what a miracle this entire keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, there's not much more to it. In the suite, there were some other friends that were mutual friends of me and the guy who invited me. I hadn't seen them since 2015 when they hosted me at a barbecue before Merriweather Post that summer. So it was like a real get together. And so the vibes were just outstanding. We were in this suite for a 3-set show that I couldn't have been in a better place, from eating oysters to sitting by myself to now being in a luxury suite, having donated or miracled my ticket to a friend who wasn't expecting it, in a catered private bathroom suite, watching this 3-set show. Couldn't have gone better. But I want to hear your opinions before I say about what I thought about the music, because I know that J-Dub said something about perfect song set list pickings that I might disagree with for night 3. So
yes,
I'm gonna let the good vibes. I'm gonna cut off at good vibes. So what do you
Skinny,
guys
you
think?
go first.
Well, I mean, it's funny. I can't believe I didn't run into you, because my wife and I walked the Highline Trail that day, and we were down in Chelsea Market, and I know where you had lobster roll and all that. I saw that place. I was like, and then we kind of passed by it because 10:30-ish, like everything was just starting to open. And I agree that the whole history and like vibe in that area of the city is just so different. I love it in Chelsea. It's really good. If you haven't been to Chelsea, highly suggest you go down there. Highline Trail is a lot of fun too. It's just so weird how that all came together. I mean, I'll talk about the music real quick. I mean, I love the show, but I agree. Like a lot of times I felt, with the exception, it was like misplaced sets like every night. And then it might not have been your bag. And like the construction sometimes of the set list was strange. For instance, just to like backpedal real quick, like a Leaves Strange Design, I think, is why everybody had such a problem with night 1, which is like weird. Like, why do you have a problem with that? I don't know. But even here, I'm at it. I wouldn't have thought like, and Everything's Right is something that you wanted to open up Earth Day with, but maybe you do. I mean, because, if we're talking about the climate, everything's not right, Trey. I mean,
good point.
You know what I mean? And then, for me too, then a tube, and I'm like, okay,
and
this
good
is
tube.
Good. Yeah, good
It's
tube.
a great tube.
Yeah, it's really good. A little still under my 10-minute earmark, but
it's like 9.
Yeah. But then
But still under 10. Yeah.
But still under 10. And I just felt like listen, Light's not one of my favorites, but that jam was probably, I thought, the best of the week. Like,
so I need to read the text message that Christian sent me during Light.
Oh my God.
So I was on the floor for this night, and at Madison Square Garden, I am a rail rider, but I am a back rail rider. I am not a front rail rider. So when you get down to the floor, you can always, without fail, find me and Megan on the very back rail of the floor. We get a good spot close to, whatever the soundboard is, whatever the fence is. And that is where you will find us. And when this show started and they played Everything's Right into Tube, that was a fucking awesome segment of music. I'm a huge fan of Everything's Right. As far as them not playing something Earth Day related to start this show, I think they did the same thing with the 420 show. They didn't do what was expected, which was, they were going to play, Light Up or Leave Me Alone, or
Legalize it.
Right. Or, Steer It Up, or like any of these, marijuana related tunes. And obviously they played a couple there, but I think the same philosophy falls for how they constructed the set on this, except for obviously the third set, which they had like a whole theme to, which, yes, related to Earth Day, but I think it also related to just, an underwater theme. But like, I don't understand how, like, Everything's Right, a 10-minute tube. The 555 was pretty funky. People might not like that tune, but this is a funky version into Back on the Train. Fine. Army of One, maybe you don't like that tune. Go take a piss. 12-minute Axilla. And look at the statistics on Axilla. All of those motherfuckers in the venue have never seen Axilla 2.
I'm pretty sure they played it in Mexico, but that's about it.
Right. right? I knew that was a rarity when they hit it.
I also saw it in Vegas, but before that, they hadn't played it since 1995. Right. So Axel 2 here, like people are going to be excited about that. And then the Gian Santos to end. I didn't even think they needed that Santos at the end. They could have ended with that really high powered, very, very explosive gin. And
that gin was good.
It was good. And it didn't have necessarily the themes of some of like my all-time favorite gins, but it was a rocker that really demonstrated again how energized the band was, and again, you get into the second set, maybe you don't like What's the Use and Everybody Hates Numberline. So I get it, but that Numberline was a raging version. Trey wishes his daughter a happy birthday. I think a lot of people go into some of these things looking for something to complain about. And if you don't like a particular song, I think that that's one thing, but you can certainly appreciate a good version of a song that you don't like. And that's what you have maybe with this set. Maybe you don't like Army of One, or maybe you don't like 555, but
I don't like Light, but I realize what its purpose is. And that
wait, I don't think I read the text that you.
Oh no!
I'm waiting.
Started to
say it.
Sorry, I got sidetracked there. But so when Light started, Skinny texted me, "LOL, Light." And then the next text was "Fish sucks," and then the next text after that, which was 15 minutes later, after they jammed the fuck out of the Light, was "Best Light everything." So, look, Light is one of those tunes where, yes, I guarantee you, a lot of people don't like the formal part of the song, but Light is one of the consistent 3.0 vehicles that they have. I mean, if you can get through the first part of it, you're going to enjoy the last 10, 12, 15 minutes, whatever they're doing with a Light. I guarantee it. Like nobody's standing there cross-armed as they're raging the 18th minute of a Light. I guarantee it. And, but I think it just goes to show that anything can be a vehicle. And sometimes you don't like the fucking ride that you're in.
Well, allow me to retort. I understand exactly what you're saying about Light completely, so much that in my own little private world, I've come up with what I call the Light corollary, which means that whatever new song the band loves playing the most, that's the song that's going to have the best jams, whether it's 1992 or 2022. It doesn't matter. When it was Down with Disease in 1993 and 94, Down with Disease had the best jams. Light in 2009, I agree with you, JW, that it's been an unbelievable consistent jam vehicle, and I don't like the song, but it's been some of the best jams I've ever seen.
Yes.
Let me ask, when you wrote Fish Sucks, did you use an X for sucks, or did you do CKS?
I don't know. I probably, because I'm an English teacher, I probably wrote it like SUCKS. Like, I hate the way the kids text these days, but when I'm saying, like, I guess what I was saying, like, Fish Sucks there is like a 20-minute set your soul free, which I'm totally on the ride for as an open for that second set, thinking something else besides the Lights coming. So when the beginning notes of that Light hit, I'm like, ugh, Fish sucks. But Fish sucks because they're not doing what I want them to do. I can't, right. I'm not, like, I want to be the marionettes, and the strings get cut by them like every time. And I cannot be, well, the puppeteer. I'm not the marionette. We're the marionettes. And they just, they cut the string on that all the time. And I'm like, why would they do that? And I think that game is actually pretty fun. You know what I mean? I really think that game is fun, considering then the third set, I thought I felt like they turned the sound up in the Garden. I wasn't sure, but that freeze sounded a lot louder than anything from the first set. So
before we get into the gag, I just want to say one thing about the set list choice, because the gag completely turned everything around for me.
Right.
Wait, hold on. So besides from the Light, Brian, what about this what about the first two sets? Are you like, eh?
Okay.
So you don't like
I'm glad
light?
you asked. I'm glad you
I
asked.
want to know. I want to know.
So,
Welcome to We Hate All Fish Songs.
yeah, this is a new podcast we're developing where all we do is shit on everything they play. And then go to 4 shows.
And I play the foil then because I love it all except for 2.
So everything's right. 555, Army of One, Set Your Soul Free, Light, Backwards Down the Number Line, A Wave of Hope. Okay, so I started my
Wait,
friend,
you don't like
wait.
Everything's Right or Set Your Soul Free?
You mentioned a phrase called the Church of Trey earlier.
Yes.
You can excommunicate me right now because I'm a lapsed Church of Trey.
It's
devotee.
non-denominational, Brian.
So afterward, my friend, this is during I think the second set break between 2 and 3. A friend of mine called it a nightmare set list, and I agreed with it in the moment to the point that I even repeated it. But upon second thought, I pulled back. I didn't think that was fair because I'm such a wuss and I'm a Libra, so everything has to be balanced. And so I thought of Seinfeld. Whenever I don't know how to express myself, I think of The Simpsons or Seinfeld. And there's an episode of Seinfeld where George's father is trying to explain a phrase in Korean. And he said that when he was dating a girl or married a girl in Korea, he met her father, and he repeats a phrase her father said to him. And George goes, well, what does that mean? He goes, it means this guy is not my kind of guy. And so this set list, it's not my kind of set list.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it there.
I mean, listen,
All right, well,
not
look.
everything hits your ear, right? And that's just the way it is.
It's true. And I don't like the nah-nah-nahs and Everything's Right.
Right.
I'll tell you that right now.
Okay.
But Brian,
All right,
I want
let's
you to
talk
go.
about- Yeah.
I want you to go back and I want you to listen to October 1st, 2021. The John Fishman Plays Trey Anastasio band gig from the Anthem in Washington, D.C. And I want you to listen to that Everything's Right. And you can skip the first 4 minutes if you'd like, but then listen.
See, that's
to
the thing. You could skip the first 4 minutes. That's the song.
But what about but that's 4 minutes of a 20-minute jam. So you can't say that I didn't like the whole show because of the first 4 minutes of one song. Same with the Set Your Soul Free. And yes, maybe that part of it doesn't hit you, but they jammed the shit out of both of those tunes. They're great versions of those tunes. And there are plenty of other great versions of both Everything's Right and Set Your Soul Free. And if you're boxing yourself in to, I'm not going to enjoy a 20-minute jam because I don't like the first 4 minutes of the lyrics, I'm just saying that's a little like, I think sometimes
eating oysters before a show.
Right. Or like gas station sushi, like I'm just saying, like, if your reaction to that was, man, I didn't like that set because of, I mean, maybe the jam just doesn't hit your ear right. But I don't know. I just feel like even if you're not a fan of the Church of Trey, or you're not an attendee of the Church of Trey or prescribed to that particular ideology, the jam segments of those tunes might still be manageable.
I will let you know that when I listed my favorite jams of the night, that I started writing my notes like that Sunday after night 4, I wrote good jams for this night, like Tube, Back on the Train, Axel 2, Bathtub Gin, and Set Your Soul Free.
Okay.
So I acknowledge it. There's progress being made here, but I still allow myself the grace to roll my eyes when needed. But let's talk about
noted and appreciated.
Let's talk about the gag.
Yeah. I mean, I got to tell you, amazing. And not much needs to be said about it. I'll say this. I mean, Highway Jill on Twitter had a million views of Bananas the Whale because it was bananas. And when that thing came out, it was catacorner to us. And I'm like, what is that? And then the way it was flying around, we didn't even know at the time it was drones. And then I happened when I got home to get a video myself, which I didn't even know until we got home. And I was looking through my pictures. And the whale call, like, I don't even need to talk about the songs, but like they literally were doing that loop and it sounded like a whale call. And that thing is floating around with those dolphins. And that's when the fog machines coming out of the top by the marquee in the middle. And it was just like, I'd never seen anything like that before. It was almost like, God, who do I text and who do I tell this about? Like my mom, my brother. Like I was like, because my wife is standing next to me, like, the kids are asleep. Like, I can't text them. Like, it's just amazing. It was absolutely, amazing is, I don't know, it seems like short of explaining the experience by saying amazing.
I agree.
Do you know what it felt like? Like when you take a kid to an aquarium and they see these big sea creatures for the first time and they're like, what? And honestly, as I was looking around, obviously watching the dolphins and the whale swimming around the arena, but watching the crowd's reaction, it was a total bewilderment on the part of everybody in there. What are we seeing? And they had filled the room with smoke and the bubbles and the lights that Kuroda was using against the smoke. And the crazy thing from all these videos and Skinny's whale call video, and I took a video because I was on the floor, and then you see videos of people that were up in the 400s and looking down on it. It is, I just can't stop watching the videos of it because of that visual spectacle. And when you listen to the music and during the waves, when the whale comes out, you can hear the crowd was like, whoa, holy shit, as this whale comes out of the tunnel and starts swimming around. I mean, it was bewilderment is the best way I can describe the reaction and the way I felt too. I was like, I can't believe that I'm watching this. And it was just, they had done it again. They had created this visual spectacle beyond what anybody could have imagined. And they played the music with it perfectly. Although I will say they missed an opportunity by not playing Theme from the Bottom.
Yeah.
So that's my complaint.
The king of all of missed opportunities in this sort of context was in 2018, was it? I can't remember what year they did the fish pirate ship, and they didn't play Ride Captain Ride. I thought, but
I was 2017 into
2017.
18. Yeah, into 18. Yeah.
Well, something about the gag, and I agree with both of you. I think bewilderment is the exact right word. That it did make us feel like children. It really did. It's so wonderful that they can still do that. It was my favorite gag since the 2015 Hourglass. It was my favorite one since then. But something that I think is overlooked about this gag is how it escalated. The whale gets all the headlines, and rightfully so, all the videos, because it was stunning to see. It was so big, and the dolphins moved like dolphins. The fins, amazing. The back fins, the tails had movement separate from the body. So it didn't look like the Pink Floyd pig that is just kind of like a stationary balloon moving. These looked truly like sea creatures, like sea mammals. But something that I think we forget to mention, and everyone is forgetting to mention, is how it started, because that's how it ended. It started with just a raised stage.
Yeah,
Fun,
that's right.
But we've seen that before. Then it started with projections and kind of like a sheet with projections under as part of the raised stage.
Yeah, when they did the free right at the beginning of the set, that was really cool when you could see that.
And that's cool. And we saw that during Magna Ball, kind of with the drive-in jam.
Right.
So it's neat, but it's not I mean, it's cool, but it's not as like mind blowing as it would become. Then the rainfall projections started, and that's when I really paid. I mean, I was paying attention, but that's really when my brain was like, stop for a second. We got to process. Don't think too hard right now.
What exactly was that? Was that because
know.
I heard some people saying that it was actual rain?
Well, it is. Like, it's what they did for petrichor, right? It's kind of like a droplet that collects. Am I correct on that?
I don't know, because
I thought the
were like
petrichor
solid
was
beads.
Yeah. I thought that there was an actual something that was like actually bouncing on the stage. This, I think, was some trick that Kuroda was doing where he created like a backdrop screen of lights and then was projecting lights onto that. I mean, I don't know. But then I also heard, reaction that it was like actual rain inside the venue. And I was like, I don't think that's.
And at that point, it didn't occur to me that the whole meta aspect of it is we're going underwater like that. It didn't occur to me yet at that point, despite the set list. Right. So that was still pretty mind blowing and fun with the different green projections of falling designs. So that was cool. And then everything started to turn blue and foggy and bubbly. And then it started to turn into an environment. And then it
dropped the kelp from the ceiling.
Yeah. And then it was a couple dolphins. Wow. Look at them. They look like dolphins. And then a shark came out. Oh, fun.
I didn't see the shark.
Whale. There was a shark.
I saw the shark too.
I didn't see the shark.
Bananas the whale is taking over all our perspectives, and it's like a Nat Geo documentary, and you can't figure out what you like. What was that? What did we learn about? You know what I mean? Like you watched it in 2 parts or something. So
But yeah, so that nature of it, the escalating nature of it, is really what thrilled me. That every time you thought that you had seen it, they added a new element that showed you something new. And that is the delight of it. It really set the tone for a New Year's show where the second set blew you away. And then this was the third set, but where one of the sets, whatever set the gag is for, gets all the headlines. And the other one is just kind of like whipped cream topping.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it very, very, very much.
Well, and I think
that was the one encore I stayed for, by the way. I don't know if you guys noticed the It's Ice when that screen that you guys are talking about, it totally went
cracked. Yeah.
It cracked. And I was like,
froze over,
wow, It's Ice for an encore, what are the statistics on that?
I think it's the only one ever.
I think it's the only time it's
and that, see what I mean? They'll always surprise you. They're probably like, fuck you, Skinny. Here's a light for you, but it's still awesome, even though we know you don't like it. And then we're going to throw an It's Ice in the encore. Like they do stuff like that. That's just really, people are like, why do you keep seeing them?
Well, look at the music that they played during this set too. The visual spectacle was obviously a huge part of it and what everybody is talking about, right? But the free was very good. The Wave of Hope, maybe you're not a Church of Trey. Wave of Hope is a Church of Trey type of tune, but it was rocking and it's got that up tempo pace. The waves turns into this blissful undersea type of feel. And then they fucking drop a mean ass sand that was awesome. And Sand is my favorite tune. And this version fucking absolutely smoked. And I liked it because they also did Sand during the New Year's gag in 2019 when Trey got stuck. And then they end the set with the raging split open in mouth. And
can't forget about that. That's when all the kelp fell during that.
And so the visual spectacle was unbelievable, but the music that they put to that visual spectacle, I think matched the visual spectacle and enhanced it. And the visual spectacle enhanced the music. And it becomes that circle that we're always talking about.
Agreed. Killer New Year's Eve show to the point where even the people who were couch touring it were stunned and they didn't know what the sea creatures were either. They thought, I saw a number of people who thought that they were holograms or projections.
Yeah.
And if you could really fool the crowd, that's the best.
Yeah, I could see that like at home being like, how are they doing that? Because you're not there. It's a completely different perspective, obviously, when you're experiencing it firsthand as opposed to couch tour. Don't get me wrong. I like, if you can couch tour, it's the best way to, I don't know, it's secondhand smoke, I guess.
Well,
is that a wrong analogy?
You know what, Skinny, you're talking about couch torn. And so Megan bought the stream because she couldn't be there. And so when it was getting close to midnight, I didn't know if they were going to do like a countdown and Old Lang Syne and all that stuff. And so I FaceTimed her so I could be like, like, hey, whatever, Happy New Year's. I miss you, whatever. And so we talked, and then she's like, I'm watching the show. And then we hung up, and then the Dolphins came out, and I called her right back, and I was like, you got to fucking see this. And, she could barely hear me, but I'm like showing her on the camera, and she just the look on her face as she's, seeing it just, it was a little bit of a delay. So she's seeing it on her phone and then seeing it on the computer. And then the whale flew over my head, and I showed her, and she was like, holy shit, like, is that real? And I mean, it was just one of the coolest fish moments that I've experienced in 25 years of seeing these guys. And the creativity that they are still putting into what they bring to us, we are so lucky. And yes, maybe you don't like a song or a placement or this or that, and everybody is like that. And that's part of the enjoyment of it, right? But what they still are trying to do for us is unlike, I think, any live performing act that is out there. And I think that's one of the reasons why, people call me a fluffer or whatever, but they're still doing it with so much enjoyment. And that them standing on the stage, watching all of that shit happen with dolphins and whales, flying around in front of them with 20,000 people, not sure what the hell is happening. I mean, I think that still gets them. And we're fucking lucky, man. That's all.
Agreed. So Skinny, you were there for night 4.
Yeah.
JW, you were not, right? That's the setup.
I was not there for night 4. No, I had to bail the next day.
Yeah, he boogied. We walked down to Chelsea again and went to Dos Caminos and had margaritas and Mexican food. I got to tell you, it's funny talking about food. I struck out all week. I mean, I sent more dishes back for being ice cold. It's ice than I ever have in my life. I mean, my wife remarked to me, you can't catch a break with eating this weekend. And I'm just like, it was just one of those times. And I worked in the industry, and I know how hard it is, especially with people being short-staffed or whatever. But man, I was striking out all over the place. But we didn't strike out at Dos Caminos, which is good. I mean, I don't know how you mess up Mexican. You know what I mean? It's just chicken and some guacamole, and I love it. So we went again down the High Line back into Chelsea, and then I had to take it easy because it was night 4, and I said, I'm not worried about tonight. I'm going to take it easy, and we'll go in. We didn't even leave until 6:45, our hotel room, even though it was right around the corner, and went in. And I not full of expectations, but I felt like, how much more wrong can I be about this band than the first set? I can't be any more wrong. Fluffhead, Mike's song, which by the way, I listened to again today, and I hear a Momo Dance tease right in the beginning of it. And I'm like, what's going on? And then, the traditional Mike song, Hydrogen Weekapog, the simple, which I felt was not we're going to take over New York City with this simple the last night. It was so dialed back, but so really beautifully played. It was just the most different simple I've ever heard. And then they drop Egg in a Hole, which I'd never heard before. You know, I wasn't in Vegas. So, I mean, it just continued to just drive me wild how they're going to do this night four. And I've been to night fours after a run. I've been to a New Year's Day in New York City and in Miami. And trust me, they've been completely different than what I saw on the fourth day of this run. I mean, do you agree with that, Brian?
Yes, I agree with it wholeheartedly. The first set of this night four rivaled any other set of the week. That's, I think, indisputable.
Yeah.
But in any recent New Year's Eve run, if we're going to talk about it in those terms, the New Year's Day shows, I've been to two of them. They're almost never that good. No. They're hangovers. They're people walking slower. It's quieter. Right. You mentioned not having expectations. I felt this time it was different expectations because of how blown away everyone was from the night before, not because everyone was just wasted and tired.
It was also a Saturday still.
Right. There's still a day of rest in between,
which I didn't take into account. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's
who knows what day of the week it is when it's a fish run.
I just knew that I was leaving the next morning, and like our train was at like 9:37 and 30 seconds or whatever. I was like, all right, well, tonight's not going to be that wild. Boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, that first set by set break, I wrote this down and I added it to our notes. I wrote, couldn't get better. Couldn't get better. I was blown away by this first set. You just repeated the set. A fluffhead opener? Are you serious?
Yeah. I mean, and that harkens back to something that I never saw before. You know what I mean? So I didn't start seeing Phish until 2000. And then for those that don't know, like I was a big Grateful Dead head. And then once Jerry died, I was done. I thought I was. Like that was just a part of my life where I saw a lot of shows and I really enjoyed it. And I'm going to remember it fondly. And then, you know, here we go 5 years later, and then I'm hooked. And now here we are 22 years later, a fluffhead open like that into a Mike's. Just like these are things that when I first started seeing him with Josh like 20 years ago, it would have been like, you're never going to see that. You're not going to see. It was more, you're not going to ever see this, or you won't ever see that. Like they're not doing that again, or that jam will never be played. It was more like, you're never going to see it, kid, even though I was 30 at the time when I started seeing him. You know what I mean? Like, you're never going to see that, kid. That's old hat. That they're moving in other directions, or they're not moving in any direction. They're just doing like, I don't know, stuff that we don't really like as older Phish heads or people that had been in the know. So I have to tell you, it might have been one of the better first sets, I think, that I've seen, probably maybe even, I don't know, ever. Maybe I was going to say in 10 years.
That's what you texted me.
Is that what I said? Ever? Yeah. I mean, it was traditional.
It's fun because you sound so hesitant when you say that. And I think a lot of us are so cautious because
we're not in a rank. Yeah. We're not in
our words have any real weight, you know, but there's no lack of confidence to say this is definitely one of the better first sets I've ever seen. And I've been seeing them since 1997. And it's like when they come out so hot like this, Fluffhead, Mike's Groove, incredible simple, Egg in a Hole, back into the simple, Divided Sky, and then First Tube to close it. That's
That's just like
that's an all-star
quintessential.
lineup.
Yeah, quintessential. It's really like the American League All-Stars versus I mean, whoever you like in the All-Star game in baseball. Like, I know baseball is always like a reference that you can pull to, but I remember some of the 70s teams. Like, I think they played in Detroit one year and they just had like, Reggie Jackson, and he hit one on the roof, and he was playing for Oakland. I mean, it was just like, they just had a crazy lineup. Like, how could you ever win a game against a lineup like that? I don't care who you were. If you were Sandy Koufax, you just aren't going to win against that lineup arguing. And the simple, by the time they got to the simple, Brian, that's when I was just like, I don't know what to say about this, but I certainly can't sit here and argue that they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, well, of course not.
I'm like, I don't think I know what I'm doing.
Well, that's how they make you feel.
Yeah, like, what is this?
And again, this brought me back to night 2, that first set where there's no bathroom breaks again.
Right.
And before that, it wasn't since 2017 that I felt that way. I have this thing where no matter what song it is that I like, I go to the bathroom in the first 4 minutes, because you could skip the first 4 minutes and still get the jam in. Like,
where'd you hear that?
Touche.
But whether it's like Run Like an Antelope, which is all-time fan favorite, these days they're not going to really do much with that Run Like an Antelope intro that I hadn't heard before, or Harry Hood, for example. So I had to wait all the way to the beginning of First Tube to go to the bathroom, the last song in the set, because I knew I wasn't going to miss anything that I hadn't seen before in First Tube, but I couldn't say that about any of the previous songs. So, I mean, that just speaks to it. And by the way, they opened the second set with a 20-something minute No Man in No Man's Land.
And what's funny about that is that Amy, my wife, is like, we see that every freaking show. Like, since 2015, I would love to see my stats on that. It's got to be upwards of like 20 times. It's close to it if it's not over it. And I'm like, oh, No Man's. And then it's like almost 30 minutes. Like, and then the jam is so good in there. They almost get lost, like in the 2015 one where they did do the Hourglass. I felt like they were hearkening back to previous, Josh mentioned the Sand with the Clones. I felt like the It's Ice almost was a harken back to 2013 when they did the Jemp truck set. But, 2 nights before that, it was either the 28th or the 29th. They played an amazing show, Carini in there. The It's Ice had this incredible breakdown where I've never heard until this run the actual crowd just be like, oh, like completely enamored by the breakdown in the It's Ice, which it's like, it's Ice. It's not Tweezer. Like, let's be honest. But that's what I thought. I thought they just kept harkening back. I felt like that No Man's was definitely a harken back to 2015. And then it got strange again. The Piper's like excellent. I felt like maybe they didn't ripcord, but why did they go into the Jabu? See, again, this strange design that, which from the first night, the way that the second set was designed was not necessarily at the end of it my taste.
I agree. And I was with some of my friends who are up from Delaware just for this show. I think one of you knows her. Skinny,
no, my wife knows her. I think they went to
Right.
college together at Randolph-Macon, maybe.
Right.
I'll have to ask her.
Yeah, so it's a small world when you're this into fish. And so but I was hanging out with her and her significant other, and it was the best vibes in the world. After that first set, the beginning of the second set, we were just, dancing on clouds. And then around the time of what was it? A Lonely Trip, I think it was. There started to be some drama in our row where this guy who had too much of something, he had too much of whatever he had too much of. And he started just kind of pushing her, not physically like with his open palms, but like his shoulder, like he was trying to walk his way through a row, but simultaneously through people as if we were not there. And then he was like unsteady. He was grabbing at the straps of her tank top to kind of like steady himself. Like obviously that wasn't going to work, but he wasn't quite assaulting her in that sense. He was just too spun to know what was happening. And while there is sympathy in my heart for that, it's also like, get your shit together, man, or find people who will help you. And his friends were helpless. And when he started pushing his way through us, I tried to de-escalate and be like, yeah, man, this is someone's spot. And he looked at me straight dead in the eye, like at me and through me. He goes, this is not someone else's spot.
What's he?
Almost, like a robot.
Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Stormtroopers.
I mean, he must have thought he was, because his eyes were the size of saucers. And he was just not in it. And he just couldn't stop touching and moving and pushing and, holding his hands up and his arms, like kind of like he was at church. A speaking in tongues kind of church, like not the good kinds.
One where they handle snakes.
Yes. Yeah. He was just not in his right mind or his body. And his friends, I felt so bad for them, man. They were just, oh my God, like, we're so sorry. They were really upset. And we just decided around walls of the cave, the three of us, you know what? It's not worth the hassle. It's the end of this run. They only were able to come up from Delaware for one night. And, that's a hassle in itself when you travel for one night out of 4. And so we're like, you know what, let's just find another place. And so that's what we did for the very end of the show. And everything was going just aces until that point. And also, like you just said, Skinny, it wasn't really my type of set list at the very end of the second set, but it was all gravy by then anyway. There was no complaints to be found in my head. Literally, I was happy. I don't like Walls of the Cave that much, but I always love how it ends up.
Yeah, I could tell. So I was watching the stream for this show, and the No Man's was obviously fucking balls. It was awesome. That was raging. And I could tell as soon as they went into the Caspian, you could almost hear like an audible groan from the crowd. The Caspian is still good.
Yeah.
The Piper is very good. So they kind of heat it back up for that Piper. And, it's a decent, like almost over 11 minutes. And then again, when they really had started to hit that groove, I won't call it a slow build Piper, but that intro was a little bit elongated, at least as far as the tempo. And then I don't know which one of you said it, but it was a total fucking ripcord out of Piper.
Yeah, it was me. And the Jabu it was almost like they kind of brought the whale call loops back in for the Jabu, but that didn't.
And the Jabu was okay, but it definitely
felt weird there.
It did. I think it took I think they had trouble establishing the energy on a consistent level because it was raging with the No Man's. It kind of dropped off with the Caspian, picked up with the Piper, dropped back down with the Jabu. People probably jammed out to, I always wanted it this way. But then Lonely Trip, I personally like Lonely Trip.
Lonely Trip, but it's a slow down song from something that if they would have had, I would have rathered a 20-minute Piper, get rid of the I always wanted it this way, had a Lonely Trip, and then end with a Jabu. Do you see what I mean by the design?
Sure, right. But it's the structure of the set. But if you look at it from the Piper on, it didn't have a consistent flow to the set, even though they were, they went from always wanted it this way into Lonely Trip, and then The Walls to close. And and then you get a nice triple encore here with Wilson, Bowie, and more. But I think that after that first set, the second set here was a letdown for a lot of people that were in attendance.
Wow, because the first set, again, I'll just go back, and I think you agreed, Brian.
It was like a second set, first set.
Yeah. It was like, all right, we still have one more set of music to play here. I know that's not how they approach it. I mean, I'm approaching it that way because it's my perspective. And comparison, like we always say, is the thief of joy. There's no way you can compare to that first set. So everything is going to be kind of a letdown. If they would have done some things that when I'm thinking about it and even ended instead of a Walls with a no encore, like do something weird like that, then like the house would have been brought down. But hey, listen, that first set, I'll take it. They could have played like one note for the second set, and I'd have been like, whatever,
So to wrap it all up, any miscellaneous thoughts that any of you guys have that we didn't get to touch on?
Sorry, Skinny. The only thing I'll say is, again, with the Sci-Fi Soldier here, Egg in a Hole. I know that when Fish released the soundboard, it was just simple, and they added the Egg in a Hole afterwards. But again, here's another Sci-Fi Soldier song now that everybody's like, oh man, that shit's so badass. So I can't wait until they play Knuckle Bone Broth Avenue or Clear Your Mind or one of the other songs that I just want everybody to know I was an early adopter. I love all the Sci-Fi Soldier stuff.
It's on record.
Duly noted. We had an amazing time. I just, New York in the spring, I went up to Central Park, cut across to the Ghostbusters building. I mean, there's not much you can say about that was bad about the weather, the weekend, just who we were up there with and the times that we had and the experience of not only being outside the shows, but inside the shows. So it was an A+ for me. A+.
Yeah, I will add one other thing is that, you go to these runs, and especially when we miss out on something or something changes from an original plan, and then you get to meet the people that you did. I mean, we met and got to hang out with Carl Gearhard for a little bit, and we met RJB and hung out with him for a little bit, and some Osiris people, and we saw Ryan Storm and chatted with him, and there was just all these different people. We saw an old friend of ours,
Weekend Walk. I was talking to him for a little bit.
I mean, we saw an old friend who lives in Boston now, Sarah, and just those connections and that community piece of it it's just another layer to the music and the visual spectacle and all of that stuff that goes into it. And New York is just such a special place to see Fish. It's just so much fun. It's so comfortable. There's so much to do in the city and eat and people to meet. And it's just such a special time, whether it's Christmas time, New Year's time or April or summer or whatever. Man, I love New York City, man. And I love seeing Fish in New York City. And I'll go and see him as much as I can there just because of all of that.
I would echo that. Between a message board that I've been posting on for about 20 years now, and the founder and owner of it is going to be a guest on Attendance Bias in the next couple of weeks. But between that and this podcast, this was a really big week for me socially, because when I told you guys earlier, I got my tickets to the 2 shows. They were solo. All 4 were solo. It was single tickets, and I didn't spend one night or day alone. And the community vibe that's built up around here, to the point where the 3 of us didn't see one another. I mean, you guys hung out, obviously, but all of us, I didn't see either of you. And now we're talking about it as if we spent the whole week together.
Yeah, I know. Which I love that, Brian. But,
yeah, me too. Sorry. And I'm already looking forward to our recap of Atlantic City in however many months.
Year 2. Yeah.
So that, I went, as I mentioned, I went to Mexico, and that's its own special thing. this was really the first run that felt like normal. And that was really super special and should not be, or should not have been taken for granted. I certainly did not. I came home glowing every night, whether or not I loved the set list or not. I did love every show. I didn't think there was a bad one in the bunch. There were just ones that didn't live up to other ones. It's all in a closed world anyway. So what's the point? I loved it all. It felt normal, and that's what it's worth to me. And if you could feel that way at a Fish show, which is probably the weirdest place any person can find oneself on any given night, but yet it's the most natural place for a lot of us to find ourselves on any given night. You know, that juxtaposition feels great to have back.
Yeah, it definitely does. And we're so appreciative to talk to you and the fact that we both have podcasts and we're talking about, you know, some same things, but like you always say, some divergent ways to talk about it. But to bring it back home and talk to you about these shows has just been amazing. So thank you, Brian. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we set out when we started doing this thing was talk about music and make some new friends. And you know, you fit the bill. It's always awesome. And you know, just the perspective that we've all gained over the last couple years, I think makes going to something like this. I will say this, out of every single person that I saw in the 4 days that I was in New York City, man, everybody was so happy. And there was a sense of, you know, jubilance. We brought the festive part of the season with us. And you know, that's something that it doesn't matter what the band does. You know, a lot of that is just us and the interactions that we bring, and how we have developed a community. And I mean, that's something that I love as much as the music.
To wrap everything up real quick, what are your summer plans?
We are going to Merriweather and Atlantic City. I think that's it. Yeah, I'm working summer school, so I work a summer program at my school, and it just doesn't. I want to go to the Man, but you know, Foo Fighters is canceled. God, rest in peace, Taylor. I mean, that was just so tragic. We were supposed to go up to Philly to see them, and I love the Foo Fighters. I just actually finished Dave Grohl's book not too long ago, and you know, so that's us, man. That was going to be my time up in Philly, was seeing the Foo Fighters, and so I think it's just Merriweather, those two shows, and the weekend of Atlantic City.
Yeah, so I am doing the Man. We are doing the Man, me and Megan, and we're doing Atlantic City, Merriweather, and then we're doing the first 3 nights at Dick's. So what about you? What are you doing? I know you're doing
married.
Atlantic City. Yeah,
you're getting married.
Congratulations.
And
That's
you're
why
going to
not gonna
Alaska.
be at Merriweather, right?
Yeah,
Right.
well,
You're going to Alaska, right?
Yeah, yes, for a honeymoon, we're going to Alaska.
That's
so
amazing.
That's really exciting. Although I will say, when Fish announced their tour, I mean, I live so close to Jones Beach, and I have so many friends from my life on Long Island before I moved to Queens that everyone assumes I'll be there. And when they announced their tour, I had a text written out to my girlfriend saying, "Hey, I think we should reschedule." And then I stopped typing because I meant it as a joke. Of course, we've been engaged for 2 years now because we were going to get married in 2021. Right. And then something happened. You may have heard of it, that postponed it. And I, of course it was a joke, but sometimes over text, no matter how well you know someone, you can't always tell. So I deleted that text. I'm just going to Atlantic City. That's the only show that I think fits in the schedule this year and the logistics. So still 3, and I'm still happy to be there because it was such a good time last summer.
Yeah, and we'll have to hook up with you definitely then, because we saw you there last year, but we'll have to go out and have lunch and hang out, and then we'll have to do another recap, because talking to you, brother, an old friend, man. I mean, you know, we're old friends, but I mean, you might as well just add yourself to the mix.
Yeah.
Thanks. I still haven't had a White House sub, so that's
okay. Dude. We'll go there together.
All right. Done.
All right, well, thanks again, guys. I'm glad you were here roughly just a week later after the show's ended. It's still fresh. I was so glad to have the opportunity to talk about it. Can't wait till next time.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Love you, brother. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we'll just do a quick wrap up here from the Stub Me Down crew. If you want to follow us on the socials, you can check us out on Twitter. We are at stub_me_down. And we are also on Instagram at the same address, stub_me_down. Do us a favor. If you have not, go check out Attendance Bias, an unbelievable podcast. Brian gets great guests, talks about amazing shows. He's a stat nerd just like me, so you'll learn a little bit about the band. And we're a big community here. There are a lot of us podcasters out there that are just trying to have some fun and tell some stories. So support local podcasters. Brian's a great one out there to check out. And Skinny, awesome. Great talking to you. As always, I love you guys. This is so much fun. Can't wait for next time. And we will see you the next time you need to get out of your shitty seats and down to the pav.
Brian, brother, love you. See you, dude.
Love you.
And that's it for today's episode of Attendance Bias / Stub Me Down, the recap of Madison Square Garden from April 20th to 23rd, 2022. So there's really no fact check to deal with today. We just had our freewheeling conversation. I'm sure we got a bunch of stuff wrong, a few statistics to check out, but I guess now is not the time for it. So I'd like to thank JW and Skinny, the guys from the Stub Me Down podcast. Please check out their podcast. If you enjoy Attendance Bias, chances are you will like Stub Me Down as well. So I'd like to thank JW and Skinny for being good sports about doing a recap for MSG. I'd like to thank Fish.in for the recordings used in today's episode. And I'd like to thank, of course, you for listening. If you enjoy Attendance Bias, please support the show by leaving a rating and a review of it on your favorite podcast app. Also, you can follow Attendance Bias on social media, mostly active on Instagram and Twitter. Reach out, say hello, and I'm happy to send you a free sticker. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next week on Attendance Bias.